Hi, I'm Art Bergeron, and welcome to episode 7 of the 12-part series Elder Law 101, which I did several years ago and have now updated in 2025. For those of you who don't know me, I have been practicing for 48 years now, but the last 15 of them have been at Myrick, formerly called Myrick O'Connell. We're a multi-specialty law firm. We're the biggest firm outside of Boston. And as a result, everybody gets to specialize in what they really like. I'm 75 years old. I really like elder law. My clients think I'm young. So what I've tried to do in this series is to cover all of the issues that a typical couple or individual might face, really starting when they're young and going right through after they're dead. So I started off dealing with incapacity and estate planning issues before you're 60, and then things to think about in your 60s, your 70s. I took a break and focused on tax issues because there are some tax issues that are uniquely affect seniors. Then I talked about folks in their 80s, and then talked about why it is that you can always qualify for Mass Health. That's always amazing to people that they can always qualify. I talk about the last year of your life, which is what I'm going to talk about today. Then in the next episode, I'm going to talk about dealing with the things you left behind, whether you left them behind because you just own them in your individual name and they're going through probate, or you left them behind because they're in trust, or because you named somebody as a death beneficiary, all those issues. Then I devote a specific episode just to talking about trust, because that's typically about the first thing that people say when they come in to talk to me, is that they want to have a trust. And I say, well, what kind? And they say, why do you need a trust? Well, everybody has a trust. Well, what kind do you need? Well, I have no idea. So we talk about what the different trusts are, the different problems that are solved by different trusts. I spent an episode talking about dealing after you've died with the kids and the grandkids, because there may be issues specific to them that would affect the way in which you're giving them things. I have an episode devoted strictly to looking at your Medicare package, which if you're a senior starting in your 60s, you probably want to be looking at every year. And finally, I talk about, I do a 'Tis the Season episode, which we typically do in December when I'm doing these live, which talks about giving and also about tax planning, which should be happening at the end of the year. So the people that I talk about are always my friends Frank and Mary, who in this episode I'm going to say are 75 years old. And their kids, Peter, Paul, and Mary Jr. And if they are 75 years old, then at 75 in the United States, Frank right now has an actuarial life expectancy of 11.14 years. And Mary has an actuarial life expectancy of 12.92 years, which means that at 75, according to the general tables, Frank's going to be dead at 87. Frank's going to be dead at 86, and Mary's going to be dead at 87. But of course, you never know, right? You never know. Now, of course, you never know starting when you're 1, you never know. You get to our age, though, and you know that people really do die. I always tell people, to me, life is like being on this boat, and you're just kind of floating along on this boat in the ocean. And you go to bed every night, and you wake up every morning, and you're still on the boat. Some days it's good weather, and some days it's bad, but you're still on the boat. And then one day, you look out at the horizon, way out in the horizon, you see this red light. And what that red light is that's the lighthouse of the farther shore. And from then on in, every morning when you wake up, you just, you can look away, but every time you look straight ahead, you see that light, right? So that light tends to appear for folks. I know based on a lot of experience, I have about 2,500 clients for whom I've done estate plans or done work, or I'm doing estates because they've died. You get to be about 60, 65 years old. That's about when most people, unless they've had medical problems, start seeing that red light. So Frank and Mary at 75 have both seen the red light, and they both know it's coming. But they also know that Frank at any point could just get hit by a truck, and then Mary may fall into that swimming pool when they're visiting Peter, Paul, or Mary Jr.'s kids' house. And so you may be living the last year of your life right now, and maybe you do know it, right? Or maybe you don't know it, but you're just living it because, and so and you know that, you know, after you die, well, then, you know, something happens. You're not, you know, there are different opinions about what happens after you die, but the point is that you do die, and then your body turns into remains, and that's that. So there are also a number of kind of there are some unusual diseases, but in general, there are some kind of predictable paths to death, and therefore some predictable things that happen in the last year of your life. There is the cancer path. We're all aware of that path. We all have, you know, friends. For people of our age, we're regularly dealing with people that we hear about who have cancer, many younger than us. Cancer, in some ways, can be one of, I've come to appreciate from dealing with a lot of clients, can be one of the better paths to death, because many people don't lose cognition until kind of right at the end, and there's a lot of pain controls that are available now if you're dealing with cancer. So, but it's a path, and if you're on that path, then there are some predictable things that happen. You don't go to a nursing home with cancer, right? You stay at home, you're getting treated, and then eventually you die. So then, of course, there's Alzheimer's disease, or that other set of diseases whose major symptom is lack of cognition, is memory loss, and just kind of lack of cognition in general. That's typically a much more gradual path. So you're in this kind of twilight of your life, potentially for a very, very long time, and that may have some implications too, because if you've got dementia, as things go along, it may be that you can't stay at home, or that if you are staying at home, you need a lot of care at home, and so that's why dementia is often, or Alzheimer's is also often called a family disease for that reason, because there's so much kind of family or other care that's involved. Of course, there's heart attack or stroke. I had my first TIA. That's euphemistically a trans-ischemic attack. The more straightforward thing is it's a mini stroke. It's a very short stroke. So I actually had that experience of just losing feeling in my right arm, and in this particular case, dropping to the floor because I had lost feeling in my right leg, and I was saying to myself, "So is this it? So is this it?" So anybody who has gone through some of those things kind of has had that experience of knowing it could just be like that. It could be very quick, or you could be stuck in this kind of in bad shape for a very long time. There's something which the doctors will use this term, but most people won't hear of it, right? And it's the term for how you're doing when everything is, there's no particular thing that's bad, but like just everything's bad, and you're like not eating and feeling crummy, and you really don't want to be alive anymore. And what the doctors often call that is failure to thrive. So there are a number of, and that's the point at which you really don't want to be here. You want to be dead. And folks with failure to thrive typically die fairly soon. So there are a number of causes of death, and each one causes a different path. One of the commonalities, though, unless you are, I'll say, lucky enough to die in your sleep. Inevitably, my clients say, "Oh, I'm just going to die in my sleep." Well, hope is not a plan, but maybe you will. I remember talking to my neurologist after I had the mini stroke, and said, "So you hear people die in their sleep. Well, sleep doesn't kill you, right? So what is it? Is that just that they had a stroke?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Most people who die in their sleep, it's because they have a stroke, right? Or they have a heart attack." And I said, "A heart attack? Doesn't that wake you up?" He said, "No, actually it doesn't." So but the point is, you don't have to do a lot of planning for that, except you want to make sure that your documents are, you're always kind of ready to go. You want to make sure your bags are packed. But you do maybe want to do some planning if you need to be dealing with frailty. And frailty, whether it's from Alzheimer's, or it's because you have cancer, or it's because you've had that stroke, but it didn't kill you, but you're not in great shape, right? Really involves a number of things. So what you may want to think about doing, if you're trying to plan for the last year of your life, right, is to know some of the players, right? You may want to find out, for example, who are the home care providers in the area. You may want to talk to someone who just kind of who knows them, or you may want to visit some of these folks. You may want to know who's really good at home repair and what kinds of repairs or changes to your home you might need if you were frail, if you really couldn't get up those steps, or if there really was a problem that you might just walk out the door and go down Main Street and get hit by a truck. So there's some controls, right? And what are the assisted living communities, or what is the assisted living community that you'd like to move to if you knew that you couldn't be at home? And I know my clients always say, no, I'm never going to leave home. Well, that's fine until you can't be at home, just because you don't have the resources, and it's typically a resources issue, to provide for the care or the repairs to allow you to be at home. And finally, you may even want to go see some of these nursing homes. I know that sounds like a terrible thing, right? You may, as an excuse, go visit some of your friends who may very well be in those nursing homes, just to get a sense of what they're like. And say to yourself, well, would I want to be sick here? Because some of them, I've been to a lot of nursing homes. I wouldn't be crazy about being sick in most of these places. I definitely would not want to be sick in a lot of them. And a lot of them, though, there are differences, right? So you may want to kind of shop around. Whether you're looking at you may want to just kind of be aware of the fact that as you get into during that last year of life, you're going to be seeing the hospital more, you're going to be seeing the nursing home more, you're going to be maybe having to deal with your house. And so you may want to develop a set of people and hopefully get them to know each other that you'd be dealing with to help you make these decisions. You probably want a geriatric care manager. And if you don't know what that is, then that's unfortunate, because the geriatric care managers, sometimes now called life care advocates, if I recall, are basically typically nurses or social workers who decided that what they really want to do is they like working with old people, and they like developing, working with the old people and their families, and developing their care plans and managing their care plans. They're not providing the care, but they are the care managers. There are some terrific ones in this area, but they vary by area, right? And like so many individuals, like the professionals you deal with, like your doctor, like your nurses, like lawyers, you want to meet these people because you want to get a sense of whether you feel like you can develop a relationship with them, whether you could get along with them. So you need a geriatric care manager. You all have, if you are in your 80s, you all have a PCP, right? You all have a doctor, right? You need an elder law attorney. I'm just going to say it right out, right? You may have had an attorney for years and years who's been your family attorney, and you don't want to leave him and all that, and that's all fine, except that there are a lot of things about elder law. It's kind of like doing tax law. There are so many moving parts to it, and it's so constantly changing that you want to make sure that you have somebody who specifically deals with that area. It doesn't have to be me, but I'm telling you, you want somebody who is specifically an elder law attorney. And then, with those people, you want to learn something about the programs, right? For instance, Medicare. You know that Medicare in general covers, Medicare A covers hospitals. Medicare A, by the way, is the piece that also covers up to 100 days in a nursing home if you're being discharged from a hospital and it appears that you're going to get better, right? What many people have never heard of are these so-called 60-day orders, Medicare for the homebound. So this is Medicare even if you haven't been in the hospital, if you do not have the ability to get to the hospital or to get to your doctor's office, if you really are homebound, then a doctor can prescribe these so-called 60-day orders, because they only last for 60 days, right? Although they are infinitely renewable, to provide for things like nursing home care, physical therapy, occupational therapy, durable medical equipment, anything that you would need medically but can't get to because you're homebound and you can't get out of the house. I've known clients who've had 60-day orders for 4 years because the orders simply keep getting renewed because their situation doesn't change. And as a result, they get to stay home Because if you're anything like Frank and Mary, you never want to leave home, right? And so you want to take advantage of these options, right? Finally, I just want to talk, for a second about hospice. So the Medicare hospice benefit, first of all, does not provide for residential care. So you're not going to be able to get Medicare to pay for a residential facility, right? They provide a whole cluster of other things, like nurses and home care aides and counseling, a bunch of things to people. If a doctor has said that the disease that you have, if it continues unabated, may cause you to be dead in 6 months. And one of the questions that always comes up is, well, what happens if I live for longer than 6 months? Well, that's okay. In that case, the doctor can simply continue to renew the Medicare hospice benefit for infinite 6-month periods. Or you may get to a point where you graduate from hospice. Now, the first time I heard that term, I assumed that it meant that you died. But no, actually, 25% of people who get the hospice benefit, one of the things about hospice is that it is assumed, because the doctor has said that it appears you're going to die within the next 6 months, that you are no longer getting medical care in order to cure you, make you better. You're getting medical care in order to make you as good as you can be for all of the rest of your days. And that's that's what the focus of the hospice care is. And I think it's really important for folks who may be in that last year of your life to be saying to yourself, at some point, it may be that you want to get better. Everybody wants to get better. But it may be also that especially in this, if you're going down the cancer path, that there may be things that you've tried in order to get you better, but they didn't get you better. And now you're heading into more aggressive kinds of treatment, which often the goal, if you talk to the folks who are doing the treating, isn't necessarily to get you better, but simply to extend your life by more, right? And you may find, as you're going down that path, that there's a point where the side effects of that continuation of care make it so that you really don't want to be living the days that you have left with those kinds of side effects. And you may decide that for your own sake, that you'd rather have less days with more quality as opposed to more days with crummy quality, right? I always tell people that for seniors, once again, we all accept the fact that we're going to die, and and I always tell people there's no such thing as young or old. There's healthy, sick, and dead. And if you're healthy, you don't want to be sick, and you don't want to be dead. And if you're sick, you want to get healthy. And if you're sick and you're never getting healthy, guess what? And so I say to people, I say, to me, for me personally, the measure is, I say to myself, if I knew that I would be exactly the same tomorrow or worse than I was today, do I really want to wake up tomorrow? That's a kind of a good measure of kind of how you want to be being treated. And at that point, you may be deciding you want to be treated in a way that makes you feel better, even if the numbers of tomorrows as a result of that shrinks. So you may want to talk about the hospice benefit. Finally, I just want to mention, most people, when they hear Mass Health, they think about nursing home care. And that's where most of the Mass Health money goes. But Mass Health, like you, do not want you to go into a nursing home. So Mass Health has designed a program to help you stay at home if you possibly can. It's called the Frail Elder Waiver. It has the same asset limitation structure that Mass Health for Nursing Home Care has. And if you want to learn more about that, you want to watch the episode that I did and that I mentioned earlier, why you can always qualify for Mass Health. And in that case, why you can always qualify for the Frail Elder Waiver, to learn more about it. And basically, the program, if you qualify for it, Mass Health will pay for home care typically up to no more than 40 hours a week. If you're in the Metro West area, I am told by a very good friend, Sherry Hunt, who works at elder care for Cape Cod and the Islands and works on Nantucket, that there are a number of people on Nantucket who actually are getting practically 24/7 care through the Frail Elder Waiver Program. It takes a long time to qualify, so if you're going in that direction, you want to start working on it as soon as possible, right? But you need to be aware of the program. Finally, you want to know who is implementing your plan. If you're dealing with the last year of your life, there are many of those days of that year where you may not be feeling so hot. And you want to make sure that there is a power of attorney that you have that names your agent, your power of attorney agent, who can handle all of your financial and other legal matters for you, and that you have a healthcare proxy, and that proxy is available to help deal with the changes in your life as you're going through this last year. Finally, you may want to have a separate document called the HIPAA designation to the extent that you want more people than just the healthcare proxy agent to be able to talk to doctors and have access to your medical records. Typically, this is the case because on the healthcare proxy, you can only name one person at a time. So if you have multiple children, you can name one person as the proxy, but you can give everybody the right through your HIPAA designations to access your medical records so that they can all talk about it and talk about kind of what they think you would really want given what your situation is. Finally, you want to look at doing a MOLST form if you're in that last year, medical orders for life-sustaining treatment. If you're in the last of your year of your life and you know that you're going to be dying soon, and then you have a heart attack and your heart stops, do you really want to get revived? Even though you know that even if you get revived, that you're only going to live for a very short time, and that only about 25% of people who are over 80, if they're doing resuscitation, actually that it works, that they actually live more than 7 days. So do you really want that? If you don't, then you need to sign then your doctor needs to sign a MOLST form, and you need to assent to it. You need to put it on your refrigerator. So you need to kind of talk about that. We talked a little bit about the power of attorney. It could be your spouse, it could be your kids. You can actually name one or more people as your attorney agent. Regarding the healthcare proxy, as I mentioned, you can only name one person at a time. Regarding the HIPAA designations, it gives opportunity to a variety more people to be involved in all of this. As I mentioned with the MOLST form, do you really want to be revived? And one of the MOLST form boxes that you can check off on the front page, because it's really designed, the front page of the MOLST form is designed if there's an emergency. And so you're on the floor, and the emergency folks have just walked in, and they're going to try to revive you, and they're going to try to take you to the hospital unless they see a MOLST form on your refrigerator and they read it and you say, don't revive me. Or if you want to stay at home because you want to die at home, don't take me to the hospital. Leave me at home. Leave me at home. These are really, obviously these are hard decisions to make. But if you're right now in the last year of your life, then you're thinking about this stuff all the time anyway. I'm not telling you anything. I'm just kind of talking to you about some of the actions you might want to take. And that leads to specifically to helping the people who are going to be working with you, your power of attorney agent, your family, your healthcare proxy, know how you want to be treated. You know how you want to be treated, but they need to know how you want to be treated if you don't have the ability to say it. That's really, really important, because otherwise they may find themselves arguing about how they would want to be treated as opposed to agreeing on the fact that you should be treated the way you want to be treated because it's your life. So there is kind of what I'll call the pre-mortem to-do list, right? Regarding your car, you want to make sure that the car gets transferred before you die. Otherwise, it causes an inadvertent probate. Regarding your house, oftentimes, if you want to avoid probate, you're giving the house to the kids anyway. You can transfer a so-called remainder interest to them. Keep a life estate so that when you die, they instantly become the owners, so there's no probate. Bank accounts, as long as you own them jointly, there's no probate. Things that you own, just stuff, right? Give it to them before they die so you can get to hear them say thank you. And finally, you may want to look toward giving money and other things away before you die so that you can avoid the estate tax, or so that they can avoid the estate tax, because you're going to be dead. Because contrary to popular myth, there is no gift tax. And if you give everything away the day before you die, you have thereby avoided the estate tax. So I know that's a lot of information, and it's talking about a topic that, unless you're going through it, many people don't want to think about. But you get to our age and you have to think about it. So if you have any other questions, or you want to watch any of these other seminars, you can go to my YouTube channel, Elder Law Frank and Mary, or you can contact me. I'd be happy to talk to you. You can email me or call me. I never charge for advice, which I love to give. So thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next installment of Elder Law 101, the 2025 version. Thank you very much.